Today we're going to discuss an important question when it comes to buying a co-op in New York City, and that is subletting your co-op apartment if for some reason you no longer want to live there. This can be either a temporary, if because of work or other life situation you have to be away for 1 or 2 years but planning to come back to your apartment, or permanent, if you're upsizing or downsizing and planning to keep your apartment as an investment and rent it out. But even if you're planning to live in your apartment for a long time, this is still an important factor to consider. The answer to the question whether you're allowed to sublet your co-op apartment or not can be a little bit more complicated than just a simple yes or no answer. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. At the end of this video, you will know the typical co-op sublet rules in New York City, what to expect from a co-op when trying to sublet your apartment, and any additional fees that you must be aware of. What is up, everyone? My name is Sargis. I'm a licensed real estate agent based here in New York City, and this channel is all about New York City real estate when it comes to buying, selling, and renting. Co-op ownership is what makes up the majority of New York City residential real estate market, and usually co-ops are known for having a long and difficult purchase process and a lot of restrictions. Well, there are rules that are common across a lot of co-ops. The reality is that every co-op building is different. There are instances when for certain buyers with a specific situation, we don't look at co-ops at all and only focus on condos. But excluding co-ops just because they are generally known for being difficult might not be the best decision, since depending on your situation, you might miss out on a lot of apartments in a co-op buildings that otherwise could have been a great choice. So the bottom line is everything depends on your specific situation, your needs, and your long-term goals. And in order to make the right choice, you have to understand the building, how it operates, the building's financials, policies, rules, and so on. In this video, we will focus on one of the important factors that will affect your decision, and that would be the building sublet policy. This varies a lot depending on the building. The most common sublet policy that you will see across a lot of co-ops is sublets are allowed every 2 out of 5 years, usually after 2 years of ownership. During the period when you're not subletting, the home must be either your primary residence or you can use it as a pied-à-terre, which means a part-time residence if pied-à-terre is allowed in the building, or just simply keep it vacant. Other variations of this rule can be sublets allowed every 3 out of 5 years or 2 out of 4 years, or maybe you're allowed to sublet your apartment after 3 years of ownership, or maybe there is no prior occupancy requirement. The other type of sublet policy you might see is when the co-op has a cap of maximum years sublet during the life of your ownership. With this type of sublet policy, it usually doesn't matter when you're subletting your apartment, as long as you don't go above maximum years allowed. For example, if the co-op has 3 years maximum sublet policy without any prior occupancy, it doesn't matter if you own your co-op the next 4 years or 20 years. The maximum that you will be allowed to sublet is 3 years. You can sublet either the first 3 years or 1 year at a time, or the last 3 years before selling it. Other variations can be 2 years maximum sublet, or 4 or 5 years maximum sublet, or maybe 3 years maximum sublet after 2 years of ownership. You get the idea. Keep in mind that there are co-ops that allow exceptions. In some co-op sublet policies, I've seen a language that goes something like this. Any further subleases beyond this are at the express discretion of the board and must not be assumed. In a situation when you are planning to return to your apartment after subletting it for 2 years, but due to unforeseen circumstances, you have to be away for another year, if you submit a letter to the board explaining the situation and express a strong wish to return to your apartment after the sublease, the board might allow you to sublet your apartment for another year. Or this is another example of an exception that a co-op might make. Sublets are not permitted except for hardship and are subject to review and approval of the board of directors, and then for only 1 year term. So because of the life circumstances, if you need to sublet your apartment and it's not allowed in the building, if you can write a letter to the board explaining your hardship, they might allow you to sublet. But again, these are examples of situations situations and exceptions that are possible, but it's not something that you should rely on. And buy the apartment assuming that you will be able to sublet it if sublets are not allowed, or sublet it for more than what the maximum number of years are allowed. There are co-ops that aren't strict at all and do allow unlimited subletting, usually after 2 or 3 years of ownership. And of course, there are co-ops that don't allow sublets at all. But keep in mind one important thing: those rules are subject to change. And a co-op that, for example, allows unlimited subletting after 2 years of ownership can change its rules and put a cap on maximum number of years during the life of your ownership, or change it to 2 every 4 or 5 years, or some other variation of those. There might be situations when you're able to find out that the changes are coming before making the purchase, if the board started the discussions already and it's all documented on the board's meeting minutes. In this case, during the attorney due diligence period, your attorney should be able to see this in the board's meeting minutes, and if this change is a deal breaker for you, since you don't have a signed and executed contract, you should be able to back out of the deal. But the board might start the discussions later after you complete your purchase. So the bottom line is the rules and policies are subject to change. There are no guarantees that the sublet policy today will remain the same in the future. Before we move on, at this point you might be thinking that this video has a lot of pretty useful information and you're about to hit that like button. Since you've just liked the video, you might also hit that subscribe button for more real estate videos. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Now let's talk about what you should expect from a co-op when trying to sublet your apartment. Just like any resale of a co-op apartment, for almost all co-ops, the sublets are also subject to the board approval. In the sublet policy section for most co-ops, you will see something along the lines of this: no shareholder shall sublet the whole or part of an apartment for any term or extend any previously authorized sublet to any person or persons without prior written consent of the board. Which means for most co-ops, the sublet is two-step process for tenants. First, they have to be approved by the shareholder. Then once they sign a lease, they have to submit a co-op board package and be approved by the board as well. And the board can reject any resale or sublet application. The required paperwork for the board package also depends on the building. Some co-ops are not strict, and the board package may consist of a few basic forms and acknowledgement of the building's rules. And other co-ops can be very strict and require a substantial paperwork from your prospective tenant. That's why it is important to hire a pro agent who will be able to screen the prospective tenants properly and help the tenant to put together and complete the board package. Depending on how strict the building is, you want to make sure that you're signing a lease with the best possible tenant who's qualified to rent in your co-op building in order to minimize the possibility of the board rejection. For a lot of co-ops, your tenant must go through the co-op board interview as well. Also, expect to have some restrictions on the lease terms and any existing lease renewals. It is common to see co-ops that have minimum and maximum lease term requirements. The other important thing to consider is the limitation on how many units in the building can be rented at once. A lot of co-ops don't allow total rental units in the building above certain percentage. So even if the building allows subletting, but if the cap is, let's say, 20 apartments at once and it's maxed out, you will be put on hold until another unit is taken off the sublet list. And there might be other shareholders waiting to sublet their apartments as soon as it's allowed. So there could be a waiting list as well. And the last thing I want to talk about are the fees associated with subletting your co-op apartment. When you buy an apartment in a co-op building, besides your monthly mortgage payments to your lender, if you financed your purchase, you also have to pay monthly maintenance to the building. If you want to know more details about what exactly those fees cover, how they're calculated, and much more, it's in this video. And on top of your regular carrying costs, a lot of co-ops charge shareholders additional fees for subletting their apartments. Again, depending on the building, those fees vary a lot. Some co-ops might charge a percentage of your maintenance. Usually it's anywhere between 5 to 30% of your maintenance as an additional sublet fee. Or it can be a percentage of your rent collected. Or it can even be a dollar amount per share. If the sublet fee per share is $10, and for example your apartment has 300 shares in the corporation, that means that you will be charged an additional $3,000 for every year you sublet your apartment. In some co-ops, the fee can even increase every year. For example, for the first year, it can be 5% of your maintenance, the second year 15%, and the third year 20%. Also, there can be additional flat fees to process the paperwork for shareholders subletting their apartments. Typically, you'll see application fee, processing fee, move-out fee, and things like that. As you can see, each co-op is different. When you're searching apartments for sale, it is very important to make sure that besides the apartment itself, the building also is the right choice for you. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. For someone, co-ops that don't allow sublets can be the right choice, and for others, this can be a deal breaker. This video was about the sublet policy, but besides the sublet policy, there are many other factors that will determine whether or not that specific building works for you. And to make sure that you aren't wasting your time in the wrong places, always make sure to work with a pro agent who understands the co-op structure, how they operate, and most importantly knows how to find out the necessary information for you. That's it for today. If you got any valuable information from this video, it would help me a lot if you just like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. You can comment down below if you have any specific questions, or reach out to me using my email in the description of this video, or DM me on Instagram to book your free 30-minute one-on-one consultation if you're looking to buy, sell, or rent here in New York City, or if you just have questions regarding New York City real estate. And lastly, click the video you see on your screen if you want to know how much money you need to buy an apartment in New York City and what are the exact buyer closing costs. Thanks for watching. Until next time.